The notorious Pedro Alonso Lopez, sometimes called the Monster of the Andes, is a character from a bleak period in criminal history. This person from Colombia, who came into this world on October 8, 1948, experienced unimaginable brutality and left a path of tragedy in his wake. Over the course of 11 years, from 1969 to 1980, Lopez perpetrated horrific murders, rapes of children, and other crimes against humanity. Though Lopez fearlessly claimed credit for an astounding 300 killings, his cold-blooded savagery targeted at least 110 people, mostly young women and girls. His horrific body count solidifies his position as one of the most infamous rapes and serial murders in human history. Pedro Alonso Lopez's disturbing story starts in Santa Isabel, Colombia, where he is thrust into a society characterized by extreme poverty and unstable families. His stepfather and mother sexually abused Lopez as a child, causing a devastating impact on his early life. There are simplified interpretations that try to pin the criminal behavior down to this traumatic event, but the complex human mind defies such reductions. The horrific rage that would afflict South America for almost a decade began with Lopez's first known crime in 1969. He would often trick street girls into trusting him before he would take them to secret places where he would do horrible things to them. The enormous number of crimes committed by Lopez and the wide area over which he operated gave rise to the terrifying nickname, the Monster of the Andes. His killing grounds extended across Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia, demonstrating his capacity to cross borders and take advantage of regional differences. Among the most upsetting parts of Lopez's actions is the fact that his victims were particularly defenseless. Taking advantage of social weaknesses and power disparities, he committed horrible atrocities against young women and girls who made up the bulk of his target population. The sick psychopathy of Lopez is shown by his intentional targeting of the helpless, for whom he intentionally caused unimaginable misery for the sake of his own sick enjoyment. The plot became even more intricate when Lopez demonstrated his ability to elude capture. Because of his wandering lifestyle and his great understanding of law enforcement procedures, he was able to elude capture and continue his reign of terror in other nations. It is extremely difficult to pursue transnational criminals, especially in areas characterized by social and economic inequality and political instability, due to the logistical and jurisdictional hurdles that investigators must overcome. When he was taken into custody by Ecuadorian police, Lopez's murderous rampage came to a brief halt. A botched effort to abduct a little girl caught the attention of the surrounding residents, which ultimately led to his imprisonment. After being taken into custody and turned over to the authorities, Lopez's gruesome confession to the rape and murder of many victims revealed the full extent of his crimes. Following his confession, judicial processes attempted to back up his claims and piece together a full picture of his crimes, which was no easy feat considering the number of victims and, in some instances, the absence of hard proof. Conviction for the murder of 110 people was the outcome of Lopez's trial in Ecuador. This figure, however shocking, was lower than his alleged dead count. Questions regarding the judicial system's ability to handle persons who perpetrate crimes of this magnitude were highlighted by the court processes and his eventual incarceration. The validity of Lopez's assertions was still being investigated with lingering skepticism. Questions about psychopathy and its rehabilitative potential have been raised by the Pedro Alonso Lopez case. Lopez typically described his acts with an emotionally distant air, revealing a disturbing lack of regret for his conduct. Psychiatric tests probed the depths of a mind that could commit such atrocities in an effort to understand the mental processes that underpinned his actions. Outside of the courtroom, Lopez captivated the public and media with his fame. His case's dramatic coverage was a sobering reminder of our culture's sick fixation with those who blatantly break the rules. Responsible reporting and the ethical concerns of sharing material that might sensationalize or romanticize criminal activity were topics of heated arguments sparked by the media's coverage of Lopez's actions. After his conviction, Lopez's case was caught up in the legal processes of other nations. The country of Ecuador, where he was arrested and tried, decided to keep him in prison for his crimes. Nevertheless, Lopez's ordeal with the legal system was far from over. As time went on, he became a geopolitical pawn, as many nations showed interest in prosecuting him for crimes that occurred on their territory. The decision-making process surrounding Lopez's case was further obstructed by the intricacies of extradition treaties and international law. His imprisonment came to symbolize the difficulties of dealing with transnational criminals and the necessity for global collaboration in combating transnational crimes. Concerns over Lopez's potential for eventual reintegration into society surfaced on occasion as he grew older in jail. Many people felt strongly about the idea of granting parole to someone who had committed so many horrific crimes. Others, in favor of rehabilitation, pushed for thorough mental evaluations and the possibility of supervised reintegration into society, while others opposed to the idea said that Lopez deserved a life sentence for the gravity and scope of his crimes. Public opinion, legal structures, and social attitudes toward crime have all evolved throughout time. Many people started talking about how justice, punishment, and the possibility of redemption had changed since Lopez's case. As a result, communities and justice systems had to do some soul-searching and face the disturbing truth that some people are capable of doing unimaginable harm to other people. Even as he nears the end of his life, Pedro Alonso Lopez will be remembered for more than just the horrific numbers of his atrocities, a sobering reminder of how easily social standards may crumble and how evil can lurk even in the most unlikely places. His case should serve as a warning. Law enforcement, academics, and politicians are still trying to figure out what he did, but the ghost of the monster of the Andes is a constant reminder that we must never rest until we find those responsible and put an end to unspeakable crimes. With Pedro Alonso Lopez's continuing incarceration behind bars, attention turned away from the courtroom drama and onto the mysterious guy. Within the prison walls, Lopez's actions became the focus of morbid fascination and real anxiety. Experts in the fields of psychology, criminology, and research attempted to decipher his complicated mind in an effort to comprehend the motivations behind such massively evil deeds. Interactions between Lopez and other prisoners and prison employees provided an interesting dimension to the storyline. Word got around about a man who was still evading capture and who seemed to have no regrets. Psychiatric assessments performed on him while he was in jail sought to clarify the elements that had influenced his criminal behavior and to determine if he was capable of feeling regret or making amends. There was a lingering concern about whether someone with Lopez's history could ever be accepted back into society. Researchers had a tough time getting to the bottom of Lopez's offenses because he was reluctant to give consistent or thorough facts. The precise count of casualties, where the bodies were found, and the circumstances of each murder were all mysteries. Not only did this leave law enforcement and the public with unsettling doubts, but it also created an icy vacuum that needed filling. Many nations vied for authority over Lopez, leading to a series of court disputes over his fate. His incarceration in Ecuadorian jails was prolonged due to the complicated web of extradition treaties and political factors. Prosecutors' attempts to understand the far-reaching effects of cross-border prosecutions sparked debates on the necessity of more collaboration to combat transnational crime. A further investigation into the complexities of criminal psychology was stimulated by Lopez's case. Researchers in the fields of psychology, forensics, and academics hoped to learn more about serial killers by identifying trends in their conduct. The study investigated what may lead up to such horrific acts of violence, as well as what could motivate or provoke them. There was an ongoing investigation into how the media influenced Lopez's story. Discussions centered on ethical concerns, responsible reporting, and the influence of sensationalism on public opinion. There was a call for the press to handle the dissemination of information on Lopez's case properly, since there is a fine line to walk between educating the public and glorifying illegal activities. Over time, Lopez's case came to symbolize the necessity of a united international endeavor to tackle the intricacies of transnational crime. In order to successfully fight criminals who may exploit jurisdictional barriers, the international community had to reevaluate legislative structures and create coordination channels. Dealing with individuals whose crimes transcended national borders is no easy feat, as the delicate balancing act between national sovereignty and the pursuit of justice demonstrates. It seems that the lasting impact of Pedro Alonso Lopez's legacy went beyond the particular atrocities committed by him. Not only did his case prompt investigations into the law and psychology, but it also prompted society-wide discussions on the factors that may lead to the rise of people with his background. Recognized as elements that may contribute attribute to conditions favorable to criminal activity were poverty, structural problems, and a dearth of resources in certain areas. The larger conversation broadened to cover topics like mental health treatment, societal responsibility, and the significance of tackling underlying issues to stop these kinds of tragedies from happening again. In the complicated web of human nature and the pursuit of justice, Lopez's case also served as a sobering reminder of the limits of the judicial system, the difficulties in confirming his statements, and the difficulty in comprehending the extent of his crimes demonstrated the limitations of conventional judicial systems when faced with crimes of this scale. The possibility of Lopez's eventual reintegration into society was a recurring theme in his later years. Allowing someone with a past to walk free sparked a heated discussion about the possibility of rehabilitation and the societal concerns involved. There was little encouragement or insight into Lopez's ability to change his cold manner and terrifying revelations. As the globe struggled to come to terms with what the monster of the Andes had become, the terrifying ghost of Lopez lingered. Not only is his case a part of criminal history, but it also serves as a chilling reminder of how easily morals may be eroded and how evil can lurk in the darkest places. Everyone wanted to know more about the dark side of human nature after reading Pedro Alonso Lopez's narrative, whether it was a warning about the dangers of materialism or a terrifying look into the human mind. Justice, human nature, and the pursuit of knowledge all came together in the latter chapters of Pedro Alonso Lopez's life. Both law enforcement and the curious public kept a close eye on Lopez while he was incarcerated because of the mystique surrounding him. Mental health experts and psychiatrists sought to understand what drove Lopez to do such heinous acts by delving into his complex psyche. They set out to answer basic concerns regarding serial killers' motivations for committing such heinous crimes and the evasiveness of guilt in their minds. Lopez's unnerving disconnection from the seriousness of his actions made him a disconcerting obstacle for anybody trying to see past his horrific exterior and find any compassion. Legal disputes about Lopez's fate kept the global world preoccupied with the case's larger ramifications. Prolonged discussions were stoked by the difficulties presented by international crime, disagreements over jurisdiction, and the intricacies of extradition treaties. The ongoing necessity for cooperation and reassessment of international legal frameworks was highlighted by Lopez's position as a representation of the challenges associated with dealing with transnational criminals. The media, which is constantly trying to influence how people see things, became entangled in the story. Discussions centered on ethical concerns, and responsible reporting continued to be a top priority. Media outlets reporting his tale had to deliberate on how to tell the narrative without glorifying illegal behavior, while also informing the public. The media has a heavy burden in influencing public opinion, and the case's complexity necessitated careful coverage. The possibility of Lopez's eventual reintegration into society was a recurring theme throughout his latter years in jail. His possible release sparked a heated debate, with rehabilitationists calling for thorough mental evaluations and the prospect of regulated reintegration as key points in the discussion. Opinions differed on whether Lopez deserved a life sentence in prison for the seriousness and scope of his offenses, as well as the consequences of releasing someone with his past. Not only did Lopez's health deteriorate over the years, but so did public opinion, legal systems, and society's attitudes toward crime. As time went on, Lopez's case came to represent how concepts like justice, retribution, and redemption are fluid and ever-changing. Whether someone with such a horrific history could be rehabilitated meaningfully remained an open topic, raising basic concerns about the capacity for personal growth. As Lopez grew older behind bars, his case was a sobering reminder of the system's limits in dealing with crimes of that scale. The limitations of conventional judicial systems were on full display when faced with persons who acted on the margins of human decency, as was the difficulty in completely grasping the scope of his crimes and the difficulties in confirming his assertions. Pedro Alonso Lopez left more than just a bleak record of crime statistics. Not only did his narrative spark scholarly questions, but it also made society reflect. Conversations grew to cover the economic and social factors that may have played a role in the rise of people like him. In the larger conversation, concerns about poverty, systemic problems, and resource scarcity in some areas came to light, calling for a holistic strategy to tackle the origins of the crisis and stop it from happening again. As Lopez drew to a close, his actions and the larger consequences of his existence were both examined by society, from shock and revulsion to a deep interest in what could drive someone down such a wicked road. Pedro Alonso Lopez's narrative continued to evoke a wide spectrum of emotions, regardless of whether it was perceived as a cautionary tale or a terrifying investigation of the lowest corners of the human mind. In the midst of the world's ongoing struggle to comprehend the monster of the Andes, Lopez's legacy served as a sobering reminder of the constant necessity of being alert, having empathy, and working together to stop the worst kinds of evil from happening. The story of Pedro Alonso Lopez's life behind the prison walls assumed a more reflective tone as he neared the end of his sentence, exploring the larger effects of his horrific deeds on society, justice, and the human mind. Researchers and prison officials were both baffled by Lopez's mysterious behavior while he was in prison. Ongoing psychiatric assessments sought to delve further into his mind in an effort to comprehend its complexities. The intractable mysteries of such heinous criminal acts and their possible causes posed an intellectual challenge beyond the purview of conventional psychology studies. The worldwide community struggled with the continuing ramifications of Lopez's case as legal disputes continued over his destiny. There has been a reassessment of international cooperation in light of the difficulties associated with transnational crime, jurisdictional conflicts, and the complexity of extradition. The importance of ongoing collaboration and the creation of international legal frameworks that can handle such intricacies was highlighted by Lopez's status as a symbol of the challenges in dealing with transnational criminals. The story became enmeshed with media coverage, which has had a significant impact on public opinion. Ethical concerns dictated the transmission of material pertaining to Lopez's case, and responsible reporting remained a top priority. Journalists walked a tightrope, walking the line between informing the public and glorifying illegal behavior, demonstrating the enormous power the media has to influence public opinion. Many people were deeply divided on the subject of Lopez's potential for reintegration into society, which touched on fundamental questions about society's values. The rehabilitation community's stance was one of subtlety, with proponents highlighting the possibility of regulated reintegration and thorough mental evaluations. Opponents of Lopez's release argued that he should remain in prison indefinitely due to the gravity of his crimes and the dangers that may arise from releasing someone with his past. Not only did Lopez's health deteriorate over time, but so did public opinion, legal systems, and social views on crime. His story symbolized how justice is always changing, which made people think about the nebulous idea of redemption and how change may happen in the human mind. Insights into the character of evil and the possibility of change were prompted by the continuing investigation into the feasibility of significant rehabilitation for an individual with such a dark history. As he entered his last years on Earth, Lopez's case was a grim reminder of the limits of justice when dealing with massive crimes like his. When dealing with those who acted on the margins of human morality, the difficulties of completely understanding the scope of his crimes and the problems of confirming his assertions demonstrated the limitations of conventional judicial systems. Society as a whole was moved to reflection by Lopez's legacy, not just individuals. Conversations grew to cover the economic and social factors that may have played a role in the rise of people like him. In the larger conversation, concerns about poverty, systemic problems, and resource scarcity in some areas came to light, calling for a holistic strategy to tackle the origins of the crisis and stop it from happening again. The world's ongoing struggle with the mysteries surrounding the monster of the Andes served as a sobering reminder, through Lopez's legacy, of the constant necessity of awareness, comprehension, and unity in the fight against the worst kinds of evil. Not only did the historical figure Pedro Alonso Lopez's story shed light on one man's fall into madness, but it also served as a warning tale that resounded with communities all across the globe, compelling them to address the deep concerns that come from seeing people at their most extreme. Thank you very much for your attention. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you have ideas for other exciting cases that you would like to see, please comment or send an email to crimesabroad@outlook.com.